My parents said they couldn't afford to pay for a vacation for me. Then I saw my sister's children in first class. I didn't say anything, but a week later they weren't smiling anymore. I was always the other brother, not the golden child. Not the one who received praise at family dinners, just the one who was there. My sister, Elena, on the other hand, was the shining star, the perfect daughter, the loving wife, the devoted mother of 2 beautiful children, the one who made my parents do the impossible for her. And me? I was Rodrigo, the responsible one, the one who didn't ask for much, the one who worked hard, paid his bills, and unfortunately always seemed to have extra money when someone in the family needed it. It all started little by little. Rody, could you help with the electricity bill this month? My mother, Carmen, asked me once. Your father and I are a little short. I had just started my first serious job, and I was happy to help. Then my sister also needed a little help. Mateo needs braces and they're so expensive. I wouldn't ask you this, but I know you're doing well. She sighed over the phone. And so it went on, helping with bills, covering unexpected repairs, paying for my nephew's school supplies. You're so lucky, Rody, my mother would say with a smile. You don't have all these responsibilities like Elena. Lucky, that's what they called it. I told myself it was okay. After all, they were my family, and besides, I wasn't struggling. I didn't have a wife, children, or huge expenses. But there was something I had always wanted, to travel. I had been dreaming about it for years, saving, looking at destinations, imagining myself exploring places I had only seen in photos. And yet, every time I was close to achieving it, something would happen. A family emergency, an unexpected expense, emotional blackmail. So when I finally booked my dream trip to Italy, paying every last penny with my own money, I didn't tell anyone. It was my only selfish act. Or so I thought. I was at the airport, waiting in the economy class boarding line, feeling that mix of nervous excitement and exhaustion that comes with international travel. Then I heard my sister's voice. Mateo, leave your backpack on the floor. The seats are huge, you don't need to carry all that with you. I turned my head and felt my breath catch in my throat. Elena, my nephews, my parents, all in the priority boarding line, laughing, relaxed, wearing matching vacation outfits. First class. For a second, I thought I was going crazy. My parents, the ones who couldn't afford to take me on vacation. My sister, the one who always said they were struggling. I took a deep breath. Maybe they had saved for this. Maybe it was some kind of miracle. Then I heard my mother's laugh. Oh, I still feel bad about not taking Rody, she said, shaking her head. Please, Elena scoffed. He wouldn't have fit in. Laughter. I felt a knot in my stomach. I clenched my jaw and turned away just as the flight attendant called their group to board. I didn't say a single word. I just watched them enter first class, completely oblivious to the fact that I had seen everything. And in that moment, something inside me changed. I didn't text them. I didn't call. For the first time in my life, I let the silence speak for itself. Normally, I was the one who made sure everything was okay, the one who asked if they needed anything, the one who checked that my parents weren't struggling. But this time, nothing. And it felt good. My trip to Italy was everything I had always dreamed of. Walking through ancient streets, drinking espresso in small cafes, standing in front of the Colosseum, knowing that I had achieved this on my own. I should have been completely happy, and I was. But at night, when I sat on my hotel balcony watching the city lights twinkle, that moment at the airport would come back to me again and again. He wouldn't have fit in. The words echoed in my head, scratching something deep inside me. It wasn't even about the money, not really. It was the certainty that my family had never seen me as part of them. They had laughed at me. I wasn't their priority, not even a second option. I came home a week later, and that's when the calls started. First my mother. Une. How was your trip? Her voice sounded exaggeratedly cheerful, as if she was trying too hard. It was great, I replied coldly. Oh, good. Listen, your father and I were wondering if you could help us this month. Just a little extra for groceries, you know how things are. I let the silence stretch between us, and then I laughed. It wasn't planned, it just slipped out sharp and bitter. Groceries, I repeated. Like the ones you bought coming back from first class? Silence. Then a nervous laugh. Rody, that was different. We had some airline miles accumulated, and Elena found a great deal. I cut her off. Don't. Honey, it's not what you think. We would have taken you if we could have. But you could have, I said coldly. You just didn't want to. More silence. I could feel her desperately searching for something to say. We didn't think you would care. I closed my eyes, gripping the phone tighter. You didn't think I would care, I repeated slowly. No apologies, no guilt, just a simple admission that they hadn't even considered me. That was the moment I made my decision. No more bills, no more help. No more being the forgotten son who only existed to make their lives easier. 2 days later, my sister called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. What do you want, Elena? I said instead of greeting. Oh, now you're too important to answer your own family, she snapped. I smiled sarcastically. First class must have spoiled you. Oh my God, Rhodey, seriously? You're angry about that? Grow up. I am growing up, I replied. That's why I'm not going to take care of you anymore. Silence. Then the voice she always used when she wanted something. Soft, sweet, manipulative. Rhodey, come on. You know how hard it is for us. You don't have children, you don't have real expenses. It's different for you. Right, I said. And yet, last month I paid for Mateo's soccer fees. Well, yes, because you always do, she said, as if it were obvious, as if it were my responsibility. Not anymore, I said simply. Another silence, and then she laughed. Oh my God, she said scornfully. Are you serious? I can't believe it. You're acting very selfishly. Click. I hung up. And for the first time in my life I felt free. The silence didn't last long. The next morning my phone was flooded with missed calls and messages. First my mother, Carmen. Rodrigo, I don't know what's wrong with you, but this isn't right. We're family. Families help each other. Call me. Then my father, Javier. Son, don't be dramatic. You know your sister and the kids need your help. Be reasonable. Then Elena again. Elena, you're really ignoring mom and dad? Wow, now you think you're better than us. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I got up, made myself a coffee, and sat on my couch in complete silence. A silence I hadn't had in years without someone asking me for something. Felt amazing. But by noon, the emotional blackmail turned into absolute panic. Another call from my mother. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, my phone vibrated with a message. Carmen. Rodrigo, please, we have a problem. I rolled my eyes. Another problem, another crisis that I was supposed to fix. Then another message. Carmen. It's about the house. That caught my attention. I sighed, debating. So I called. Now what? I asked as soon as she answered. She sighed dramatically. Rodrigo, your father and I didn't want to worry you, but things have been difficult. And well, we're behind on the mortgage. I rubbed the bridge of my nose. And you're just telling me this now? We didn't want to bother you, she insisted. But now, well, we need your help. Help, I said with an incredulous laugh. You mean pay the debt? Just for this month, she rushed to say. Just to keep us afloat until things stabilize. Uh-huh, I said, leaning back. How curious that you could afford first-class tickets but not the mortgage. Silence. Then a sigh. It wasn't like that, Rhodey. It was exactly like that. I interrupted. You didn't think twice about spending money on Elena's children, but when it comes to your own son, suddenly there's nothing left. That's not fair, she said furiously. You don't understand what it's like to raise children, to have real responsibilities. You're right, I don't, I said coldly. Because instead of living my own life, I was too busy taking care of yours. Silence. Then finally, in a much softer voice, Rhodey, we need you. And that was the truth. They needed me. Not because they loved me, not because they valued me, but because without me, their whole house of cards would collapse. I know, I said. But you'll have to manage without me. And I hung up. And this time I didn't feel any guilt. The aftermath. The next few days were strangely quiet. No messages, no calls, no sudden emotional blackmail. For the first time in years, I was completely free. But I knew it wouldn't last. And sure enough, on the third day, my sister showed up at my apartment door. I heard the knocking before I even looked at my phone. Elena, open the door. I took my time getting up. I wasn't in a hurry to deal with her. When I finally opened it, Elena barged in without waiting for an invitation. What is wrong with you? She snapped, throwing her purse on my kitchen counter. Excuse me. I raised an eyebrow. You know exactly what I'm talking about, she said furiously. Mom is going crazy. Dad is tearing his hair out. And now I have to deal with all of this because you decided to throw a tantrum. I crossed my arms. You mean because for the first time it's your turn to face it? She rolled her eyes. Oh my God, don't be so dramatic. You know perfectly well that they need help. You're just punishing them because you're jealous. Jealous? I repeated, laughing incredulously. Yes, Rhodey, all this is about the trip, right? You're upset because we didn't invite you, and now you're behaving like a resentful child. I shook my head. Really, Elena? You don't understand anything, do you? She scoffed. Oh, please enlighten me. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. It's not about the trip, Elena, I said. It's about the years I spent, when I was never invited. I interrupted her. Silence. I could hear her breathing, feel the weight of the question settling in her chest. But she wouldn't admit it. Look, she said instead. We can fix this. You and Mom and Dad can. Fix what, Dad? I interrupted again. The fact that I finally have boundaries? The fact that you can't manipulate me anymore? Because that's not fixing anything. That's just going back to how things were before. Silence again. Finally, a sharp sigh. Elena is having a hard time, Rhodey. She needs help. I laughed. I couldn't help it. Oh, now Elena needs me? She's drowning. Alvaro is thinking about selling the house. The kids don't understand what's going on. Not my problem. Rodrigo, be reasonable. I am being reasonable, I said calmly. For the first time in my life, I'm being completely reasonable. A long silence. Then my father's voice turned cold. So that's it? You're just going to walk away. You walked away first, I reminded him. At the airport, remember? More silence. Finally, a bitter curt. Fine. And he hung up. The last goodbye. That was the last time I heard my father's voice. I expected another round of pleas from my mother, but they never came. Elena stopped messaging me completely. A month later, I heard through a mutual acquaintance that Elena and Alvaro had sold their house and moved to a smaller one. My parents also had to downsize, forced to leave the life they had grown accustomed to for so long. They spent years pretending they were better than me, that they didn't need me. And now they had finally learned what it really meant to live without me. And I was free not just from the financial burden but from them. I didn't owe them my success. I didn't owe them my money. And I didn't owe them my forgiveness. So I took a deep breath, added their numbers to my block list and never looked back. For the first time in my life I was living for myself. And it felt amazing.